Welcome to the Free to Be Free Portal, where we cheer you on for your most empowered and exquisite lives. I'm Julia Ananda, your joyous host, here with Margaret Miller. Margaret will be bringing through her energy insights for the week. Margaret, I'm so happy to be here with you today.
Hi, Julia. Happy to be here as well. Yeah. So you want me to just dive in? I'm ready to go if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay. So this week we're looking at the sun in the 27th gene key. And just as a reminder, I'm going to go through the gene key of the week and then look at the Sabian symbols that are associated with this gene key by virtue of their degree of the zodiac. And then I'm going to briefly mention the new moon in Taurus that is at the end of this period on the 27th. So I will be probably doing another video to go more deeply into the energy of the new moon. I feel like it might be a little bit too much for information for one video. So that's what I'm going to do. So the 27th gene key moves from the shadow of selfishness to the gift of altruism and the siddhi of selflessness. And so this is where the sun is in the astrology, okay, in the beginning of the sign of Taurus. And feeling into this gene key and the energy of even just the words, okay, selfishness, altruism, and selflessness, and how we can utilize the wisdom of this gene key to assist us as we move through our week. I would say the first thing that we want to look at is what does selfishness mean? And how are we selfish, and why are we selfish, and what does that really mean? And always when I look at any of the gene keys, and we get reminded about this, that all of the shadows are are the energy that we inhabit or embody when we're in fear, right? When we're not aligned with our hearts and our the truth of our beings, right? That's what happens, is that we display these shadows, or these we act out in fear rather than in love. And so selfishness happens because we're afraid that we don't have enough, or we're afraid that somebody else is going to get our share, or whatever that is. And it's a very natural fear, right? Because and it had a very powerful place in the evolution of our species, right? We had to make sure that we had that we could take care of ourselves, right? And there's a very it's a powerful shadow in our world, because it has to do sort of with the idea, the sort of the Darwinian idea of the survival of the fittest, right? Which is a dangerous concept in a lot of ways, because it's saying that you know we we have to compete in order to survive. And that may have been true, right? That probably was true, uh, but in on one level, right? We had to compete sort of with the other, with whatever animal might have been chasing us. right? Or compete with other animals that were taking up the food source, or whatever it was. But really, in order for us to truly survive and to thrive, there has to be cooperation. And I think it's like a very poignant idea for the times that we're living in right now, is that moving from that competition into cooperation. And so the selfishness, just looking at it individually, and that's what I would do, in this energy insight, is take this in, like, just look at it for ourselves, and say, okay, so where is it in my own life that I can kind of see that I'm selfish, and in a way that I don't really need to be, and how could I maybe change that? And how could I bring that up into the gift of altruism? And as I was listening um, to this Gene Key, now I want to put in just right here a little plug for the Gene Keys Pulse, which is also a weekly pulse. It's a weekly um, recording by Richard Rudd of the Gene Key of the week. And so I highly recommend listening to that, and getting it for a deeper view of this Gene Key, right? So I'm just using it as a sort of a little prop or a tool for us to tap into this energy, right? And so one of the things that he said in that recording was that moving from that shadow of selfishness to the gift of altruism has to do with aligning with our higher purpose, whether we know what that is or not, whether we really think we know what that is or not. It really is knowing that there's a higher purpose for our presence on this planet, and that that alone moves us into uh, an attitude of sharing, because we will want to share whatever that purpose is, right? We want to share the gift of our being here on this planet. And altruism is different from other kinds of giving, because it is not concerned with what I personally get out of it. It's more about the joy of offering something out into the world, or the joy of recognizing a need and fulfilling that need out there in the world, right? And so I think it's just a beautiful concept that we can really tap into if we want to. And I want to introduce something to this, and this is an oracle deck that's called the Wisdom Keepers, and it was the artwork and the insights, or the guidebook that comes along with it, were written, and the artwork done by the beautiful Rosie Aronson. And she is very, very deeply connected with the Gene Keys and the dream arc within the Gene Keys. And I want to show this card. Oops, there it is. The gift of altruism. Isn't she beautiful?
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I want to also just share just a tiny bit from her, and the wisdom story. So the guidebook has a wisdom story, my gift to you, and questions for contemplation. And so I just wanted to look at I think I'll read the gift of my gift to you from this wisdom keeper of altruism. It is time to look honestly at your relationship to giving. Are you giving from your heart, or are you giving away your power? Are you giving without attachment or with a hidden agenda? What did you learn during the first 7 years of your life about selfishness and selflessness? I asked you to be intuitive in your giving. Give to causes and to people who are fertile, who can make use of the gifts they receive. If you're feeling angry or resentful, do not give. Not yet. Wait until your heart opens. Practice random acts of kindness whenever possible, and your sincere altruism will bring more joy and abundance into your life than you can possibly imagine.
The wisdom in that is so beautiful. I love the phrase to contemplate upon. Are you giving from your heart or are you giving away your power?
Yeah. I love that too. I thought that was really, really powerful. It's still sending little chills up and down my spine. So thank you, Rosie, so much for that. And and so then the siddhi of selflessness is is really the altruism in action, right? It's what happens, the being that we are when we are acting from that altruistic place, because the self falls away. The self and all of its concerns for its own, gratification and so forth falls away, and it becomes unimportant. And anybody who has, done any kind of altruism in their lives, which all of us have at some point, right? And we have these points where we've given selflessly, and we disappear in the act of that. And so that siddhi is just so beautiful. And so I want to remind us that this upcoming new moon, on the 27th, at the end of this period, is still in the energy of this gene key of altruism and selflessness. And so really maybe, what are the new beginnings that we can create that have that altruistic nature to them? Or how can we really start focusing on what our higher purpose is that will lead us into more altruistic activities in our lives? So now I want to just move on, if unless you have something that you wanted to interject, Julia.
Margaret, I was hiking this morning and I saw close enough to see clearly, but far enough to not disturb a mother moose and a baby moose walking along the trail. There's sort of a big dip, a canyon in between us. And when you were talking about altruism and purpose, I was thinking of that mother moose because I looked up the spiritual meaning of the moose and the mother moose, and it is actually very similar to that losing of the self, to that altruistic taking care of her baby, and also, interestingly enough, to the new moon, to new beginnings, to stepping forward on a new path.
Well, isn't that the most beautiful synchronicity?
It is.
And such a beautiful gift. And this is something that I'm passionate about, is taking the symbols and the messages from the messengers, whatever they are, the animals, especially the plants and the animals, the trees, and the chance meetings of people, or the just so happens that that gene key is my whatever it is, and or that Sabian symbol is, I mean, I've been doing this all week with a group of people where we're finding that we have the same Sabian symbols in different places in our astrological charts, and and just all of those beautiful connections, and that is, I think, really what the energy insights are trying to that's what we're trying to spark, in the creative imagination of our listeners and viewers. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I love the moose. Wow. Okay, so now I'm going to shift gears just a little bit and start talking about the next Sabian symbols. And so we're now at, on the 21st, we move into 3 degrees of Taurus. And the Sabian symbol for 3 degrees of Taurus is natural steps up to a lawn blooming in clover. And the energy around this is, I mean, you can kind of feel it, right? So taking the next natural steps, right? We're just barely into the sign of Taurus, which is about, Taurus is grounded and it's about our values, our skills, our resources, our self-worth. And I think the moose has a lot to do with our self-esteem and self-worth as well. So I think it's really a beautiful energy to bring in. And so, and our connectedness to our earth, to the earth, and how we receive from the earth. And clover, lawn blooming in clover, is just this rich energy, and following those natural steps to some kind of a natural fulfillment, right? Because the clover is, I mean, the bees love the clover and the sweetness of that, and it's so rich and fulfilling, and you can kind of imagine your feet on the clover. So that rich blooming clover is just pointing towards this fulfillment of consciousness, like coming to the next natural steps in consciousness and steps in our lives, and allowing ourselves to receive that. And then the next day, the next symbol, 4 degrees of Taurus, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Aren't these beautiful symbols? Some of them are really just so poetic. And this pot of gold is really at the end of the rainbow, is speaking to the riches and wealth that come from the marriage of the celestial self, or the higher self, the angelic self, and the material self. So it's both the richness in our spiritual life, as well as richness in our material life, and really allowing ourselves to receive both. Okay. Then the next day, remember I was talking about how this kind of tells a story as it goes along, right? And so then the next day we move into 5 degrees of Taurus, which is a widow at an open grave. Very different feeling symbol, right? But it's speaking to it's giving us a reminder that everything, all of the material realm, is ephemeral, right? Everything in life passes away, right? All of, everything that we, all of what we gain, and it can be lost. And and we say goodbye to relationships, we say goodbye to material things, everything passes away. And just that awareness gives us something very, very powerful. And how do we realign ourselves after great loss? And how do we recognize that there is a great gift that comes from our losses, and that we at some point, all of, through the grieving and through those losses, we find a deeper meaning in our life and a deeper, something deeper to move towards. And so that leads us to the next Sabian symbol, which is 6 degrees of Taurus, which is a cantilever bridge across a deep gorge. And I see this as sort of the being able to move from the separate self, the individual self, and having to make a bridge to other people or a new way of being or a new life after losses or after some sort of awakening of that sort. And being able to then, find fulfillment through working with others towards a higher vision. Isn't that a beautiful symbol? I love that symbol. And so that it also, you can kind of feel how it also relates to the gene key, right? You can kind of feel how it moves from that selfishness to that more altruistic feel, and then that selflessness.
Mm-hmm. From the competition to the collaboration.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah, it's powerful. And it's really a beautiful message. And it's, these gene keys and the Sabian symbols, and the astrological wheel is always turning, right? The sun is always moving through these, and it will do so next year at this time, and and the following year. But in each iteration, maybe if we're looking at it consciously, we can come to a higher alignment each time it comes around, right? That's how I utilize this, and how I look at it. So then the next Sabian symbol is the woman of Samaria at the ancestral well. And this sort of relates to, I think it's a sort of a biblical story of Jesus meeting the woman of Samaria, who was, sort of not a friend of the Jews, right? But she was able to receive the truth of the Christ energy pretty directly. And so it's giving this message of finding a new quality of being, or a revelation of some sort from and which sort of renders the old patterns useless, right? It's you can take what the ancestors provide, and the parts of it that are meaningful, and let go of the parts that aren't serving anymore, and to have this revelation of consciousness that says, oh, I can move to a higher level of being that goes beyond separation, goes beyond cultural divides, which is that gorge, right, in the previous symbol. And so then I have just a reminder in my notes that the next Sabian symbol, the 8 degrees of Taurus, is where the sun and the moon will be on April 27th at the new moon. So this is 8 degrees of Taurus, is a sleigh on land not covered by snow. So the sleigh is on land and not covered by snow. And so this is kind of a symbol of being able to anticipate the needs of the future and being willing to be prepared for the sort of expected future, as well as kind of maybe showing us the value of imagining a future where we can be, sort of just flying across the snow on the sleigh, right? And where we can move gracefully and smoothly into the future, because we know that the snow is coming and we have prepared ourselves in whatever way, which is also, such a beautiful thing. Is it's a symbol that Taurus really relates to, right? Anybody who, has Taurus, a Taurus sun would know that that's it. These are important grounded things that we have to pay attention to. And um, so this beautiful story sort of unfolds here, where we know that we can take natural steps towards whatever is evolving for us in our lives, and we can receive the riches and the wealth of our spiritual life, as well as as our material life, as we take those natural steps, because taking the steps requires a little action, and it requires a little effort, or maybe a lot sometimes of effort. But if we take them and take the natural steps, not the forced ones, but the natural steps, then we will receive those riches, inner and outer riches. And then we can kind of have a basis for dealing with our losses and dealing with, the inevitable grief and so forth that some of us may be going through right at this moment, and some of us will go through later times in our lives, or some of us have already been through over and over again, who knows. But that we have a higher way of dealing with that, and we know that we can, and that as we do that, we move into this more connected consciousness, where we become the bridge. I see it both as like a bridge between the individual and the collective, right? Or our community, coming more into activities with community, and as a bridge between heaven and earth. I see human beings as sort of uh, as a bridge between heaven and earth, just like the standing ones, the trees, right? We're sort of a bridge between heaven and earth. We're in that vertical alignment, and so we have the capacity to become those bridges and anchor the higher frequencies into the earth. So, and then that woman of Samaria at the ancestral well, being able to take those revelations, to take the whatever signs and symbols come to us through our chance encounters, and bring that into a higher level of being, and utilize that in our lives. And from there, be able to foresee a more positive future, or one that we can know that the preparation is both on the physical plane and on the spiritual plane. We have to do both. And so just in reflection of that, just and the gene key, just thinking of altruism, like just thinking of that gift, because the gifts are what we give out into the world. Like, I think it's just a beautiful story of that we could contemplate. And so that's basically it, because I have more to say on the new moon, but I think that I am complete for now.
Yeah. Margaret, that really is such an incredibly powerful story. And as you started talking about the steps in the clover and the steps that we take, the actions that we take, I pictured myself as a little girl in upstate New York where the grass comes up and it's full of clover, and some are white and some have this beautiful, rich purple in them. And as a little girl, you know that the bees are buzzing on the clover. So there's this balance of running and playing with exuberance and looking down and wondering if there's a bee, and then you start to very carefully and determinedly take your steps, and then you just trust. You just go into trust and run and play and roll and do cartwheels on the clover and the grass. And the word trust just kept coming through over and over as you were speaking and leading us through the story. And it feels like trust is part of what creates that bridge between heaven and earth, what creates that alignment and that opening up within us.
I think that's really true. And I love the bees in the clover, because I also have many, many memories of that, and also many bee stings on my feet throughout my childhood. Yeah, from that same thing. And it is very powerful. And I believe that as well, that the trust um is really essential. Like, I don't know, I guess it's faith in the that the universe has our backs. That's how I always think of that, is that we are being supported. And if we're taking the natural steps, then we will know that we're being supported, because the synchronicities will show up and they'll happen in a way that gives us no doubt, that encourages us to go even farther.
Mm.
Yeah.
Margaret, thank you so much for drawing this beautiful picture of this week, the wisdom and wow, the power of going from one of the symbols to the next, to the next, to the next. It's incredible.
You're so welcome. Yeah. And so I wanted to make sure that I remember uh, to send you to wisdomkeepers.com, and there'll be a link on the show notes, if you're interested in these beautiful wisdom keeper cards, and looking at all of the incredible offerings that Rosie Aronson has on her website as well, because this is just one of many really beautiful, beautiful things. So
Oh, excellent. I'm so glad that you brought that through. And if our viewers want to work with you, Margaret, on their own personal symbology or the steps that they're currently taking, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do with your clients?
oh, sure. Well, I do sort of spiritual coaching, and more recently that has evolved into this personal symbology where I am really looking at their astrological charts through, especially through the Sabian symbols and other symbolism, the animal medicines that might be powerful for them, as well as their gene keys. I am a gene keys guide, so I do lead people through gene keys, looking at their gene keys profile. Um, and so if someone were interested in looking at their astrology chart through the lens of the Sabian symbols, looking at their gene keys, looking at all of it sort of as a whole to get a feel for their own personal symbology, the symbols that are available to them through these incredible maps of the astrology and the gene keys and so forth. They could reach me at spiritwolfhealingarts.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And please like and subscribe and tell us in the comments your contemplations on these beautiful symbols and this beautiful, insightful story that Margaret has given to us. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. See you next time.